the concept of do's and don'ts of the pandemic, how things are shifting a little bit right now, that's for sure, in terms of what our expectations are with where we might be going in the concept of what we can do and what we can't. Let's bring on an epidemiologist and associate professor with the University of Ottawa, Dr. Raywat Deonandan. Thank you very much for making the time, Doctor. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Good morning.
Tell us a little bit about the idea of these social gatherings. We're hearing the messaging from the province. Supriya and I just talked about that, and the idea of risk mitigation. Really, there's no safe or unsafe anymore, and hasn't been for a while, has there?
No, there isn't. There's a magic number, but what you want to do is essentially avoid gathering with people who aren't in your bubble if you don't have to, and in particular avoid access to people's mouths, right? So things like anything involving dining, for example. You don't want to sit across from someone who's going to be spewing stuff into your face for a long period of time. So there's a combination of factors. There's number of people, there's the type of venue, there's the intensity of the engagement, and the duration of exposure. Those are all moving metrics, so it's difficult to give guidance around all of them. So my rule of thumb is, if you don't have to go, don't go.
Well, we were talking about that distinction way back in the spring. I mean, I'd put guests on the radio who were going to, delay their weddings by a year or so, because it is one of those once in a lifetime, you think, for most people, moments that there's going to be hugging, there's going to be kissing, there's going to be close talking and joyous celebration. And it's not like going to a movie. It's not like doing a solitary thing like going and running on the treadmill. So I'm almost surprised that more people are rolling those dice and saying, nah, we got it booked. We're moving forward with it, and with big crowds as well.
Yeah, I think people are being seduced by the lower prices, right? Because the venues are available. Catering is cheap, probably, and that's not the way to think about this. I mean, yeah, it's great to have your wedding and your loved one's over, but you'd feel pretty bad if Aunt Carol, who's in her 80s, dies from this a few months from now. You don't want your wedding to be the start of an outbreak that ends up killing your family members. So, people are free to do what they want, obviously, within the bounds of the law. In a liberal democracy, we rely upon the recognizance of individuals to self-manage, but I hope people, for the most part, are choosing to delay these events. You can still get married, but you can delay the wedding.
We're speaking to Dr. Raywat Deonandan, an epidemiologist and associate professor with the University of Ottawa. Professor, the Premier has been rather finger-waggy at the public, saying that we're not following rules. One thing that I had noted a little bit earlier on is the fact that the rules themselves seem to be rife for spreading a lot of this virus. And, you look at the fact that in Ontario, up until recently, events could have been held with up to 50 people inside. I mean, from an epidemiological perspective, is that smart?
Well, I mean, what is the appropriate cutoff? It's hard to say. Early in the summer, the idea was it's safer because the numbers were low and you can run outdoors in case things get rough. So that was a time to experiment with some numbers and some plans. But you had, June and much of July for that. When August crept in, we should have closed things down a bit more vigorously in preparation for the rough times beginning now. So, hindsight's 2020. We should have done some things differently, and we still can. And I'm glad that we've rolled out these restrictions province-wide, not just on Toronto and Ottawa, because this is going to be a province-wide endeavor, if not a nationwide endeavor. The message hasn't changed. The message is, if you don't have to socialize, don't socialize. Avoid mass gatherings in particular. Avoid indoor enclosed areas with people you don't know that well. It's a horrible message to send socially for the social cohesion of a society, but this will only last for a few more months until a vaccine is available, and then we will taper off these public health measures to get back to normality in 1 or 2 years, I hope.
I mean, well, to your point, the messaging hasn't really been that. And I've been critical of pretty much every level of government thus far, that we haven't been getting clear and consistent messaging from them. And I do you think they're going to make that change anytime soon? Because to your point of reminding people that the virus is the same and that we should be limiting our exposure to other people, I certainly don't see that walking around my own neighborhood.
It's interesting, right? Like, I'm not sure why the messaging is so inconsistent and so imprecise, and I wonder if it's politically motivated or if it's just the ignorance as it percolates from the scientific labs upwards through policymakers, eventually to the decision makers' brains. They're not hearing the right message. Or it might be a situation of we do what we can. We tell the public what they can take. If we tell people you're going to sit like this for another couple of years, that may be intolerable, and maybe it's better off to give them some interim hope. I'm not sure what the best strategy is. I think now, given the nature of information flow around the world, it's always best to be maximally transparent and honest, even with your failures, because people will hold it against you if you're the least bit deceitful. So, yeah, I think we have to rethink how we deploy messaging around this emergency. We haven't done a great job, and the tools we have used in previous public health emergencies, like around the smoking campaign, for example, are insufficient.
Dr. Raywat Deonandan joining us on Global News Radio 640 Toronto. I wonder about the winter, too, in that we've been rolling the dice with some outdoor things, that's for sure, with youth sports, which we feel comfortable attending and putting our kids in, the backyard stuff, the being in the park. It'll get to a point, we know our climate, it'll get to the point where we're going to see the days start to shrink, we're going to turn the clocks and make them change, and by mid-October, Doctor, we're going to be doing a lot less. Couldn't I make the case that there'll be far less socializing in general? It might not be March, April levels of non-socialization, but that should make us, outside of the school thing, that should make us a lot safer, because we're going to barricade in a little tighter than we've been in July and August, aren't we?
Yeah, I hope so. But, if the bars are still open, people will be going to them. Hopefully they'll be closed. People will still be having parties. Like, it doesn't take a lot of these events. It takes a few of them, a handful of them, well attended, to start outbreaks that might lead to epidemics. So, unfortunately, this disease doesn't tolerate a lot of deviance from the public health guidelines. If you look at the smoking campaign, if 15-20% continue smoking, okay, that's unfortunate. They hurt themselves. That's unfortunate. If 15-20% of people are still having house parties and things like that, even in the depths of winter, that can be quite tragic for the community as a whole. So we have to get that down to close to zero. No large gatherings. In the depths of winter, I don't know about you, but I was a young man. I was going to a lot of parties. Because that's how you get through the winter. That can't happen.
You're still a young man, Doctor. I don't care what anyone says. We both are. Yeah, it's just a number. It really is just a number.
Sure.
Professor, thanks so much for your time this morning. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much.